Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined by my trusted colleague, Wes Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field to discuss, unfortunately, Wes, a 41-24 loss on Saturday night at Lambeau Field to the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of implications to this one, which we'll get into a little bit later. But this game was all about the Packers' run defense being a no-show against the Ravens and the power running of Derrick Henry. I'm just going to start by asking you this, and I'm not asking this from an X's and O's question.
Mm-hmm.
What happened and why?
It's a great question. As I was walking through a very muddy parking lot at Lambeau Field afterwards,
I needed my galoshes to get to work on Saturday night. I left those at home, unfortunately.
I did bring my boots. I was fortunate in that regard. But I was sitting there trying to think of this thing because I don't know, Michael, if I've covered a game quite like this where we were one Ravens carry away from Baltimore tripling Green Bay up, not only just in rushing yards, but with rushing attempts.
Yeah.
And I'd read some stuff about how one of the criticisms coming out of the game the week before for Baltimore was that they didn't dedicate enough to running the ball with Derrick Henry. Boy, they turned that on its head in this one. And for the first series, 7 carries, I think it was 48 rushing yards. You just had a feeling right from the get-go, this guy, it was going to be difficult for the Packers to try stopping him. But the fact that they were able to stay in third and manageable all afternoon, every single conversion in the first half, every single drive, they were able to get points off of it. That is, I think, sort of where it put Green Bay on its heels right away. The run game was never established. Malik Willis played phenomenally well, but it just felt like if Green Bay wasn't going to match the Ravens point for point, possession for possession, this was what it was going to turn into. What I could not have seen happening was Green Bay actually getting it back to a one-possession game, getting it to 27-24 in the third quarter, but then obviously Willis gets hurt. Things kind of go a different direction. The defense never does rebound, and Derrick Henry walked out of Lambeau Field with a career performance in a career that is probably one day going to end up finding him in Canton.
Yeah, it was his 7th career 200-yard rushing game, his 2nd career 4-touchdown game. He is definitely headed to the Pro Football Hall of Fame at some point. There's no doubt about that. I thought in some ways the epitome of this game, when you talk about what Malik Willis was doing, which was phenomenal on the offensive side of the ball, as Jordan Love had not cleared concussion protocol in order to be able to play in this game, so the Packers did turn to Willis to run the offense again. As he got the Packers back to 27-24, the Ravens were on their own 20-yard line and had 3rd and 5. That was the moment. You get a stop there, you're only down by 3. Willis was lighting it up. But what happens on 3rd and 5? Tyler Huntley is in the shotgun, the Ravens' backup quarterback playing for Lamar Jackson. Huntley's in the shotgun. He starts walking around and hollering at everybody on the offense that he is changing the play. And on 3rd and 5, a basic handoff to Derrick Henry for 9 yards. When the opponent is that confident that they can just check to a run on 3rd and 5 and, easily get it by, with a 9-yard run, that just tells you how much they were in control of the line of scrimmage in this game. And it was tough sledding for Green Bay's defense. These are the questions that I came out with from that game with regard to the Packers on the defensive side of the ball. Okay, so was losing Micah Parsons and then losing the game in Chicago the way they did just a week later, was that just this too big a pile of adversity to try to plow through in this game against Baltimore? Was all the injuries that continue to pile up for the Packers for a team that has not had a bye week since week 5? Is that something that just, started to pile up and get to be too much? I think ultimately the question, as the Packers are now 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away from a playoff game in either Chicago or Philadelphia, we have seen Green Bay's defense play 2 games without Micah Parsons. We saw them hold the Chicago Bears, who have a shot at the number 2 seed, and they are now NFC North champs, hold the Chicago Bears to 3 field goals and no touchdowns over 58 minutes without Micah Parsons. But then we saw game number 2 without Micah Parsons, and the defense looked completely different and in a completely different place. So which non-Micah Parsons defense is the real one? Which one are the Packers going to have when the playoffs start and we get into do or die?
The optimistic side of me would like to say that the Chicago Bears defense.
Sure.
But the problem is the Packers, if you look at it from like a 3-round UFC fight here, they came off really strong in that first round. And the second round did not go well. I think the answer to your question is we're not going to really know until the wild card game.
I think that is the answer. We won't know until that wild card game kicks off.
But how the bounce back and how they respond is going to be very critical. The Packers, the way that they're aligned right now, they're missing one of their pivotal pieces in this equation in Micah Parsons. I think one thing I learned from this game against the Ravens was, for as much as people wanted to rip on him for his run defense in Dallas, I think this guy had, and we knew this, he had a much bigger role in it than probably I think he got credit for, with as much perseveration as people put on the fact that he was a really good pass rusher, and he had the sacks, and he was a Pro Bowler. Micah Parsons' relentless tenacity was also present in the run defense.
No doubt.
And when you look at where Green Bay came up short in this game, and it wasn't on just one particular player, one particular unit, it was that there were too many second chances, whether it was Henry, whether it was Tyler Huntley and some of the scrambles that he had. If guys weren't getting players to the turf immediately, they were dragging piles, they were breaking tackles, and it made for a very long day. Matt LaFleur even said it on Sunday afternoon. He can't remember the last time he'd seen a game in which a team amassed over 300 rushing yards. In Green Bay, it bears out in the statistics. They fell to 15th in run defense. They fell 6 places or 5 places in total defense, just based on the weight of this performance alone, which is not easy to do in Week 17, 16 games into a season. So for the Packers, it is going to be about the bounce back here. What gives me solace, what gives me some confidence in this is that they have their linebackers intact, potentially maybe we'll see what happens today. We don't want to announce anything yet, but reports are out there that Jonathan Ford was claimed. We'll see what happens with his situation by the time this posts. But he's a guy with experience in this defense, a monstrous nose tackle, because now it looks like, we know they're not going to have Jordan Riley the rest of the way because of his Achilles injury. So how do the Packers take what happened to them and put their best foot forward? Because whether or not it's Saquon Barkley in Philadelphia, whether or not it's DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monangai, they are going to have to deal with a decent running back, a couple of them, in that first game of the playoffs. They can't have another performance like this if they expect there to be a second game.
No, absolutely not. And here's the thing. I am not a football coach. I don't know jack squat about X's and O's when it comes to NFL football. But here's the thing from a leadership standpoint. I think you try to stand in front of the defensive room and hammer home the message that the narrative out there right now is that this defense isn't worth anything without Micah Parsons, because that's what they put on the field most recently on Saturday night. Now, we know that that's not true because of how they played against Chicago, but everybody always, the most recent thing that you've done is where the narrative is headed, and this meaningless Week 18 game against Minnesota is not going to change anything one way or another. But this defense the guys in that defensive room are going to have one more chance to change that narrative. Right. That the narrative that's out there now, that they aren't good enough without Micah Parsons. I think there's going to be a level of pride. Mm-hmm. I think there's going to be some determination to say that is not how this defense is going to be remembered. Just my thought in terms of whatever motivation there might be, how you bounce back from this. And I will say this. I mean, you and I were both thinking, I know you were as well as I, with 2 minutes left at Soldier Field, we were thinking this was a Packers team that had a realistic shot at the number 2 seed in the NFC. And suddenly, very quickly, as often happens in this league, everything changed. And now, with 1 game left to go in the regular season, the Packers are locked into the 7 seed, the bottom seed in the NFC. They can't do anything about that. That's where they are. If there is any silver lining to this, it is that, unlike last year, when Christian Watson blows out his knee in the regular season finale, and Jordan Love injures his hand and has to leave that game against the Bears to end the regular season before you go to Philly for the wild card round, this Packers team now actually has a chance to reset and to regroup, both mentally and physically, as banged up as they are, before you head out into the postseason. Maybe that is going to help this team, especially, as I mentioned before, a team that had its bye week way back in week 5.
Yeah.
So just maybe that's a silver lining here. As much as, you would love to be either the 2 or the 3 seed, which if you had won the game in Chicago, you would have put yourself in position to potentially get there. That's not happening. You're the number 7 seed, but maybe you can use this to your advantage in some way.
You took away, I think, one of my big points I was going to make on Thursday's show. But let's get to it now. I mean, this is the week. It's an excellent point. Not that I would have said it as clearly as you did, but this is what I was going to say. I think when you look at the motivations for this finale against Minnesota, it's twofold. I think offensively, it's keeping what you have as healthy as possible. And if that means sitting guys, if that means resting guys, if that means guys working a limited count against Minnesota, fine.
Yep.
Defensively, I do look at it as a get-right opportunity. For numerous reasons. One, somebody's got to play. You only have 53 guys on a roster. You can only elevate 2 extras from the practice.
You don't have 35 guys like you do in the preseason on the roster who are not going to make it that you can just throw out there. You don't have those options.
So as dangerous as the Vikings defense is, and it is a good one. I mean, that was my takeaway from that game that they played against Detroit. It won them the game. Offensively, regardless of whether or not J.J. McCarthy fights through it or Brosmer plays, the Packers are going to face a much different offense than what they saw against Baltimore, and to some extent what they saw against Chicago. I think there's going to be a need almost to build some positive momentum up. Also, while identifying who are we going to play in the playoffs? Which defensive tackles are you going to have out there? What is the edge rush rotation going to look like? My heart sinks. It goes out to Kamal Haddon, who unfortunately suffered what appears to be a season-ending injury. At the same moment, he was finally going to get his shot on defense after we had heard Jeff Hafley talking about how we got to find a way to get this guy on the field the way he's been practicing. So there's opportunity still in this defense for guys to show that they can be a part of this thing and can help this team win a championship or make a run in the playoffs. I think this Minnesota game could go a long way in determining, okay, when we get out on the field, whether it's Soldier Field or whether they're at the Link, what that defense, the starting 11 and the rotations that come after it, look like.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good way to look at it. The injuries haven't stopped for this team. You already mentioned Riley and Haddon, 2 guys that look like they were going to be able to help this team down the stretch. I thought Jordan Riley was a big part of the run defense in Chicago in trying to put the clamps on that 1-2 running back punch of the Bears. Those 2 guys now lost for the season. Zane Anderson, Nate Hobbs also go down with injuries. Dontavian, Wicks also exits the game with a concussion. So it just feels like the injuries haven't stopped for this team. And at the time that we're taping this, we're not exactly sure what the Packers' approach is going to be against Minnesota in terms of who's going to play, who's going to rest, are guys going to be on limited snap counts. As you said, we'll find out more information about that as the week goes along. But hopefully, whether you're talking, Zach Tom, who's missed a couple of games now with his knee injury, Evan Williams had come back from the knee injury, but maybe he gets a chance to get a little bit healthier for the playoffs. There are a lot of things, a lot of considerations here looking at this finale against Minnesota and a Vikings team that, quite frankly, whether it's J.J. McCarthy or Max Brosmer, it's a Vikings team that's going to come out pretty fired up. They have a chance to end their season on a 5-game winning streak and finish above 500 when, a month and a half ago, they're, they were going nowhere.
And that's what Kevin O'Connell does. He's done this numerous times. He finds a way. They got that defensive coordinator hire right a couple of years ago. Now there's talks now about how they want to make sure they extend him if he's not getting a head coaching opportunity elsewhere. They want to be able to keep Brian Flores in the fold. I think they should. Again,
why wouldn't
why
you?
wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And we'll look at the previous week here at the end of the show. But before I get too far down the line, let's just really quickly point out why this Packers game against the Ravens was even close. And that was Malik Willis.
Yeah.
And the fact that, so if you're looking for silver linings, you're looking for things to hang your hat on, Malik Willis does not get any practice reps, right? Very few first-team reps because Jordan Love, going through the protocol for the first 2 practices, preparing for a game in which the Packers need to win to get in until actually they learned that, the Lions had been knocked out. That whole process was geared up for number 10. He does not get cleared in time for the game. So Malik Willis goes in there. And the Packers, how many teams in the National Football League, Michael, with their backup quarterback are going to call for a go ball to Romeo Doubs on the first play and a deep crosser on the second play, or kind of a seam route down the middle to Christian Watson on the second play? 2 plays, 79 yards. 40 minutes of time of possession for Baltimore in this game, but the explosive plays on Green Bay's side, in addition to the fact that inability to stop Derrick Henry, contributed to that.
Yeah, it is remarkable what Malik Willis has done the last couple of weeks on essentially limited or no practice reps. Obviously, heading into Chicago, he was just doing the usual backup quarterback thing, and Jordan Love is taking all the practice reps leading into that game. And then with this one, as you said, the Packers are trying to get Love through the concussion protocol, and Willis not only is dealing with an injury to his throwing shoulder, so he's already going to be limited in that respect. He ends up missing an entire day because of the illness, whatever this bug was that was going through the locker room, and guys kept cropping up on the injury report with this illness thing. He essentially misses an entire day of preparation for the game. And then, as you said, he goes out there, and with the Packers down 7-0, 2 plays, bing, boom, they go the length of the field, they're in the end zone. And it was like, okay, here's the big contrast. The Ravens are going to try to grind this thing out, and the Packers are going to try to, explode offensively whenever they can. And, Malik Willis, I hate to use the joke, but it was almost like when he did have to leave the game at the end, you would have thought it was a back injury because in some ways he was putting the whole dang team on his back to try to win this game on Saturday.
Yeah, and I felt bad for him too because for a second there, I'm like, oh, shoot, please don't tell me, tore his labrum or something like that. Because the way he went down, it wasn't a hit. It was after a really, laser throw he had on Christian Watson on the out route. The guy's going to make money this offseason. He's going to get an opportunity to start somewhere or at least compete for that job. You can't be happier for him. I'm blown away by the fact that the Packers got him for the 239th pick in last year's draft. The Packers have been struggling to kind of identify that QB2 for a while, other than the fact that they drafted Jordan Love in the first round back in 2020.
Right.
Then he filled that role for 2 years. There have been multiple years where Green Bay probably had danced with fire a little bit behind Aaron Rodgers, and here he is, and Malik Willis, who has not only just been a great compliment to Jordan Love, but the Packers don't make the playoffs probably last year without him, and this year again showing how competitive he was when he had to go in against the Giants, what ended up being a 1-score game. He held the fort together. He led his scoring drive. The guy just checks every box, and I don't know what his long-term forecast is going to be. I don't make any predictions on what his career numbers are going to be, but for what the Packers have asked him to do the last 2 years, I've been blown away by it. And when you're not on Instagram at all, but there was this graphic from the NFL Network, it was actually the NFL League, the league account, where it was his numbers, which was 288 yards passing, career high, over 300 yards total yards. When you add in the 60 rushing, 3 touchdowns. And the amount of players on the Packers roster that reposted that to their story, offensive, defensive, there must have been 30 guys that did that. The amount of respect that they have for Willis, in addition to Jordan Love, but the amount of respect they have for Willis and what he's done and the way he carries himself and the professionalism he's shown over the last 2 years, I think goes a long way. In addition to the fact that he was running out there with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, and you have any questions about whether or not this guy can be someone you can build a team around or he can complement what you already have? they're in a league starved for quarterbacks. The Packers happen to have two very good ones.
Yeah, it's just too bad if his shoulder hadn't started to bother him and he hadn't had to come out. If he would have been able to stay in at that point, it was a 10-point game. The Packers were kind of on the fringe of field goal range there where you're looking at, and he even said after the game he was so disappointed he had to come out because he knew the situation. He's like, hey, we're either going to get 3 or get 7 there. You're going to be back within 1 score. Maybe the defense can get a stop, and give you that opportunity. And all that kind of went out the window.
The way he ran to the locker room and then ran out of the locker room too.
Yeah.
The people, there was a huge disappointing hush when he went running off the field after the trainers looked at him. And then when he came out, unfortunately for the Packers, their defense, Baltimore was moving the ball, but the ovation that there was when number 2 came out of the Packers tunnel, potentially being back in the game, remarkable.
Yeah. All right, well, I want to take a look at the NFC playoff picture in general, kind of a big picture look, but we'll pay some bills first and hear a word from our sponsors. SiriusXM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. At Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50-plus years of better. Pit Boss Grills, the official grill of Packers tailgating at Lambeau or at your house. Take your game day to the next level with a Pit Boss wood pellet grill. Pit Boss Grills available at Menards. Hey Packers fans, we always knew Lambeau Field was a wonder, but now it's official. Learn more about all the wonders of Wisconsin at travelwisconsin.com/wonders. Welcome back to Packers Unscripted. All right, Wes, the scenarios for the Packers are really pretty simple because Green Bay is either going to be traveling to Chicago or to Philadelphia. Either the Bears or the Eagles will be the number 2 seed. The Packers are the 7. The Bears are the ones in control of it. If they win against the Lions, they are the 2 seed, and Green Bay will go to Chicago. If the Bears lose and if the Eagles win their game against the Commanders, then the Eagles would leapfrog them for the 2 seed, and the Packers would go to Philadelphia. And I know people are going to ask us all week long, okay, which one would you rather have and whatever. I don't really look at it like that. I don't think it's worth trying to spend any time. Which one would you prefer? The thing that I think is interesting is that there's sort of that there's an element of revenge or payback to both of these potential opponents because A, of what happened at Soldier Field a couple weeks ago, and B, the fact that the Packers season last year ended in Philadelphia and the Eagles came into Lambeau Field this year on a Monday night and beat Green Bay. So you kind of have the revenge payback angle, whichever way this falls.
Last year I was really into this. If for the Packers' sake, I wanted the 6th seed. And I think the statistics and the history bears that out. Washington got the 6th seed.
Yep.
They went to Tampa, beat Tampa, and next thing you know, they're in the NFC Championship game.
Right.
They went on a huge run. I think Green Bay could have had that path if they would have been able to get that 6th seed. Because the way Philly was playing at the end of last year, a lot of stuff happened in that first quarter in that game, the wild card game with the Packers. But Philly was a team that was hitting its peak at the right time last year. I was a little bit more fearsome there. This year, I wrote an Insider Inbox today. It's a horse apiece to me. I don't really care. Whatever happens. The narratives will be what they are. The difficult thing, the tough part at Green Bay that me, if I was a professional athlete, which I'm very much not, I would have a hard time putting in the back of my mind is it was the number 2 seed really was right there for Green Bay.
Yep, it was.
In addition to the fact of what happened at the end of the Bears game, with the Bears losing in pretty heartbreaking fashion to the 49ers, the Packers win that game. You'd be looking at this week, now maybe Green Bay it would change their strategy. I don't know how they would have handled it, but if the Packers would be in a position right now with a win over the Vikings and of what could very easily be a loss for the Bears to the Lions, Bears will be favored, but I mean anything can happen.
Dan Campbell ain't rolling over.
He's not
Ben
rolling
Johnson.
over. No, not at all.
No way.
And it's a talented team. Jared Goff's had a really good season.
Yeah.
It's been some of the things around him defensively that I think have fallen apart somewhat in the second half, but it all could have been there for Green Bay to be in the 2. That being said, wash that out. Throw it away. The Packers are in a position now where out of everything that's happened, 3-game losing streak right now, losing that chance at the division title, realistically, if you can put that out of your mind, the only thing you've lost is the opportunity to host that first playoff game. and maybe more after that. But you gave that away.
Yep.
Because now Seattle, San Francisco, one of those two teams is going to take the conference, and it's going to take that number 1 seed in the bye. You got to find a way to push yourself forward. But yeah, I mean, to have it go the way that it went on Saturday night, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But if you can just in some way compartmentalize that and realize that you didn't lose that much,
Yeah.
it's just that you gave up an opportunity to gain something.
Yeah, and I think having been around professional football players as long as I have, I think the players in that locker room are mentally what's going to be on their mind is more so how they played and how they looked and how things went, not so much the whole seeding and whatever, opportunity. That's for all of us on the outside to parse and to analyze and whatnot. It's very interesting how these last couple of things are coming together in the NFC. As you mentioned, Seattle and San Francisco will be playing each other for the 1 seed. And we're kind of it's almost the exact same, pretty close to the exact same scenario as last year when the final game was Detroit and Minnesota, and the winner was going to get the 1 seed and the first round bye, and the loser drops all the way to the 5 and is going to have to go on the road as a wild card team.
Yep.
The difference in this case is that where that 5 seed goes, the 4 seed is going to be the NFC South champion, which is the division that nobody seems to want to win.
Except for the teams that are out of contention.
Right, exactly. The Saints and the Falcons are the 2 teams playing the best football in the NFC South right now, but neither one of them can win the division. It's still between Carolina and Tampa Bay. And what a crazy scenario now, right? Because the NFL put that game on Saturday afternoon. It was looking like it would be the winner wins the division, the loser is out, but now because of the Falcons knocking off the Rams on Monday Night Football in Week 17, the Panthers, they win the division, they get in. But the Buccaneers, if the Buccaneers are able to beat the Panthers on Saturday, then they have to sit at home on Sunday and hope that the Saints can beat the Falcons to prevent a 3-way tie atop the NFC
totally
South.
Possible.
Yeah, it is entirely possible. Yeah. But if the Buccaneers are no longer in just a win to get in scenario, they have to win and then they have to get help on Sunday, because if it's a 3-way tie with 3 teams at 8 and 9 at the top of the division, the Panthers are the team that has the tiebreaker, and they would get in. Whoever does win that division, Buccaneers or Panthers, they get the 4 seed. They get to host the loser of Seattle and San Francisco, because if I have it right, the Rams can no longer get the 5 because they lost on Monday night.
Their conference record's too bad.
Yeah, they can no longer get the 5 because they lost on Monday night. So the loser of Seahawks and 49ers is going to travel to the winner of the NFC South, which is not necessarily a bad spot to be in, but we saw how difficult it was for the Vikings last year with so much on the line in that final regular season game. They don't get it done, and then they go on the road as the 5 seed, and suddenly, boom, in a span of 8 days, you go from playing for the 1 seed in the conference to your season's over.
Correct.
And that's the danger that the loser of that West Coast game is facing.
Yeah, and Atlanta had a weird year, but Kirk Cousins goes back in there. They got a little bit healthier. Bijan Robinson did what he did, and that game on Monday Night Football reminds you again, and Sean McVay said it afterwards, this league will humble you. I know if Packer fans hear Matt LaFleur say it, and they say, well, that's what this league will humble you. And the Rams, you look at Matthew Stafford, he went from being what some people consider to be an MVP favorite to maybe that performance itself handed that award to Drake May. We'll have to wait and see. That's up to the AP voters. But it's been one of those type of seasons. And for Tampa Bay, they have now lost 7 of 8 since their bye week. A team, we focus a lot on Indianapolis because of the injuries there. Daniel Jones, Phillip Rivers comes back. They start 7-1. They miss the playoffs. Tampa Bay is in the middle of a potential huge collapse. And I honestly think there could be no bigger slap in the face than if they would beat Carolina in the scenario falls then when they still don't get in.
They still don't get in, right.
Which is very possible with the way Atlanta's one of the hottest teams in the league right now, and they have nothing to play for. Crazy.
Yeah, and we were even just talking a week or two ago about what New Orleans is doing with Kellen Moore, the new head coach, and they've got Tyler Shuck, the rookie quarterback, who's kind of taken the reins there, and I mean it's really interesting what's going on, because there are going to be a couple of teams in the NFC South that are not going to make the playoffs, who are sort of they have a lot to look forward to, moving forward, and as you said, I mean, Tampa Bay, I mean, maybe the ultimate sort of perfect, ridiculous scenario in the NFC South is for Tampa Bay to finally find itself, blow out the Carolina Panthers by 3 touchdowns, and then still not get in because the Falcons end up beating the Saints and the Panthers get in anyway. It just sort of feels like, the way this season has gone, that something crazy like that is how this is going to end up.
And then look at what's happening now with Sunday Night Football, right? I mean, the Packers, thank you, Aaron Rodgers. He's the one that helped set this thing up for the Packers to clinch the playoff. Green Bay isn't able to pay back the favor, but at the same time, Pittsburgh ends up falling short against Cleveland.
6 points.
It's just the way these teams get tripped up. And I actually thought, I think it kind of got a little bit viral for the wrong reasons. I actually thought Myles Garrett made a pretty good point in saying that there was so much focus, it felt like, on stopping him. Watching that game, it felt that way, that it was like, you give up the sack, you got to win the game. And it felt like sometimes there was just so much attention devoted to him that they didn't. And honestly, the more I watch Pittsburgh too, the more you got to get that ball in Kenneth Gainwell's hands. That is your guy. He's taken a unique path, but they were forcing balls outside. You don't have DK Metcalf, and the result is the result.
I saw something really interesting, and I'm going to end with this because it's sort of apropos of nothing. 20 years ago, as a rookie, Aaron Rodgers came off the bench on a Monday night game in Baltimore, in a game the Packers were getting clobbered. But earlier in that game, Deion Sanders had an interception. And then 20 years later, Aaron Rodgers is quarterbacking a game where the opposing quarterback is Deion Sanders' son.
Is that crazy?
Shedeur Sanders. That's wild, bro. That is nuts.
You know what I call that, right? I have my own theory on this. I always call that the Disney World theory.
Okay.
Which is, when you go to Disney World, there's people that are there for the first hour. There are people that are leaving in an hour. There's people that have been there for a week. There's people that just arrived. I love this type of stuff in the NFL because this is the spaceship that they're on.
Yeah.
Rodgers, 20-plus seasons in the National Football League. He sticks around long enough to be around there where Shedeur Sanders is getting a start after Deion Sanders retires for a few years and then returns with the Baltimore Ravens. It's just these are the type of things I think make the NFL world go round, and also an incredible testament to the longevity that Rodgers has had to still be playing the game at 42 years old.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's going to be an interesting Week 18 in the NFL, even if there isn't so much interest in the Packers and the Vikings this week. We will talk more.
We will have it, though. You and I will be interested.
We will be there. We will be there with bells on right after the new year, and we'll talk a little bit more about that matchup on our next show. But for now, we're going to call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to continue following all of our coverage of the team on Packers.com. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.